There is a plant crawling through the cracks in your driveway right now that contains more omega-3 fatty acids than salmon, not per pound, per serving. 300 to 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid in every 100 grams of fresh leaves. This is the richest plant source of omega-3 ever measured by science. The people who eat it daily live longer than almost anyone on Earth. In Crete, Greece, where this plant appears in nearly every meal, researchers in the 1960s found the lowest rate of heart disease ever recorded. Men in their 90s still worked the fields. Women in their 80s climbed mountain paths without assistance. When scientists analyzed their blood decades later, they found omega-3 levels 3 times higher than populations dying of heart attacks. This plant survives drought that kills everything else. It thrives in soil so poor that commercial crops refuse to germinate. It produces over 200,000 seeds per plant. It has been feeding humans for over 4,000 years, and the herbicide industry spends billions every year making sure you never learn its name. This is purslane, Portulaca oleracea, the most nutritious weed on Earth, the one you have been taught to poison. Welcome to Recession Roots. Before we dig deeper, if uncovering the free food they spend billions trying to destroy matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every video preserves what the chemical industry wants you to forget. The story begins in 1050 BC on the northern shores of Greece. Someone stored seeds in a clay vessel and sealed it. When archaeologists opened that vessel 3,000 years later, they found thousands of tiny black seeds, each barely 1 millimeter across. Purslane, the same plant growing between the stones outside the excavation site. By the 7th century BC, purslane seeds appear in the Samian Heraion, one of the most sacred sanctuaries in ancient Greece. This was not a weed to them, this was an offering to the gods. By the 4th century BC, the philosopher Theophrastus was writing cultivation instructions, telling farmers to sow purslane in April alongside their most essential crops. The Romans spread it across 3 continents. Every territory they conquered, they planted purslane. Medieval Europeans ate it at every meal. In 1288, a scholar named Bonvicin de la Riva compiled a list of everything the city of Milan consumed. Purslane made the list, not as a curiosity, as a staple. For 3,000 years, from Persia to Portugal, from Egypt to England, purslane was cultivated, valued, and eaten daily. Then something shifted, and purslane became invisible. But not everywhere. On the island of Crete, they never forgot. In 1958, physiologist Ansel Keys launched the 7 countries study to understand why some populations had almost no heart disease, while others died from it at epidemic rates. He tracked 12,763 men across 7 countries for 50 years. The results broke every assumption about diet and health. The farmers of Crete consumed some of the highest fatty diets in the world. More than 35% of their calories came from fat. According to every nutritional theory of the time, they should have been dying of heart attacks. Instead, they had the lowest cardiovascular mortality rate Keys had ever measured. Lower than Japan, lower than Finland, lower than anywhere. For 20 years, scientists credited olive oil, the Mediterranean magic, the monounsaturated fats. Then, in the 1980s, a new team returned to Crete. They were not looking for cholesterol. They were looking for omega-3 fatty acids. What they found changed everything. The Cretans had 3 times the omega-3 levels of the Dutch, but they were not eating 3 times more fish. They were eating purslane every single day, in salads, in stews, sautéed with olive oil, fed to their chickens and their goats. The animals ate purslane. The people ate the animals. The entire island's food system ran on a plant that grew wild in every field. Dr. Artemis Simopoulos, former chair of the Nutrition Coordinating Committee at the National Institutes of Health, analyzed purslane in 1992. The numbers seemed impossible. 300 to 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid per 100 grams of fresh leaves. That is 5 to 7 times more than spinach, 15 times more than iceberg lettuce. The richest vegetable source of omega-3 ever documented. But then she found something that made other scientists question whether her samples had been contaminated. Purslane contains EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, a marine omega-3 that comes from fish and algae. Land plants do not make EPA. It is biologically impossible, except purslane makes it. Not much, just traces. But when Simopoulos published the findings, researchers demanded she retest. She did. The results held. Purslane produces an omega-3 that should only exist in the ocean. In 2022, Dr. Erica Edwards and her team at Yale published findings in Science Advances that finally explained how. What they discovered rewrote what scientists thought was possible in photosynthesis. Most plants use C3 photosynthesis. It works fine with plenty of water. Corn and sugarcane evolved. C4 photosynthesis, which handles heat but still needs moisture. Desert plants like cacti use CAM photosynthesis. They open their pores at night to collect carbon dioxide when it is cool, then seal them during the day. This prevents water loss but makes them grow incredibly slowly. Scientists knew purslane could do both C4 and CAM. They assumed the plant used one system in one part of the leaf and the other system in another part. Separate, switching back and forth. They were wrong. When the Yale team mapped gene expression across purslane cells, they found both systems operating in the same cells at the same time. C4 activity during the day for rapid growth. CAM activity at night for drought survival. The products of one pathway feeding directly into the other. Dr. Edwards called it a very rare combination of traits that has created a kind of super plant. No other species on Earth does this. It is like discovering an engine that runs on gasoline and electricity simultaneously in the same combustion chamber, not switching between them, both at once. This is why purslane survives drought that kills commercial crops. This is why it thrives in soil so salty that tomatoes die within days. This is why it keeps producing food when everything else in your garden has surrendered to heat and neglect. And this is exactly why the herbicide industry declared war on it. The global herbicide market reached $40 billion in 2024. Bayer, Syngenta, Corteva, and BASF sell products specifically formulated to kill purslane. Mesotrione, isoxaflutole, indaziflam, and 2,4-D. The same chemical developed as a weapon in World War II that Scots began marketing to homeowners in 1947. Purslane is classified as one of the world's most common weeds. Agricultural extension offices publish eradication guides. Universities conduct research on killing it more effectively. Homeowners associations prohibit it. The entire infrastructure of modern horticulture treats purslane like an invasive enemy, not because it damages ecosystems, because it cannot be controlled. You cannot patent purslane. It has been reproducing freely for 4,000 years. You cannot genetically modify its seed coat to make it sterile. You cannot create a hybrid variety that farmers must purchase annually. Every plant produces over 200,000 seeds. Every seed remains viable in soil for up to 40 years. Every stem fragment that touches ground roots into a new plant. One university study attempted to kill purslane through solarization, covering soil with plastic sheeting to superheat it. The conclusion stated that if purslane dies from solarization, everything that could go right did go right. Even cooking the soil does not guarantee its death. The chemical industry cannot monetize a plant that refuses to die and feeds people for free, so they taught you to see it as an enemy. They spent decades and billions of dollars making sure you would reach for poison every time you saw it in your yard. Meanwhile, half the world never forgot. In India, they call it kulfa and cook it with spices and lentils. In Greece, they still call it glistrida and serve it in summer salads with feta and olive oil. In Mexico, it is verdolaga, sautéed with garlic and chile, served alongside beans and rice. In China, it has been cultivated continuously for thousands of years as machixian. Across Turkey, Iran, and the Middle East, it appears in meze spreads and meze platters. Half the planet treats purslane as food, the other half was trained to spray it with poison. When the next recession hits and food prices spike beyond what families can afford, purslane will still be there. When aquifers run dry and irrigation becomes too expensive for commercial agriculture, purslane will still produce leaves on a fraction of the water. Corn and wheat need 20 to 30 inches of annual rainfall. Purslane completes its life cycle on 6 inches. When summer heat shuts down photosynthesis in commercial crops above 95 degrees, purslane accelerates. The solution to food insecurity is already growing in every sidewalk crack, every neglected garden bed, every patch of disturbed soil where the herbicides have not yet reached. Learn to identify it. The stems are thick, reddish-purple, and succulent. The leaves are paddle-shaped, smooth and fleshy, clustering at stem joints. When you break a stem, it is juicy, almost translucent inside. The flowers are tiny and yellow, usually half hidden between the leaves. The plant grows flat along the ground, spreading outward like a mat. There is no dangerous lookalike with all these features together. Spurge, sometimes confused with purslane, has thin stems and milky white sap. Purslane to stems are thick, and the sap is clear. Harvest it young, within the first 6 weeks when the leaves are most tender. Eat it raw for a lemony, slightly salty crunch. Add it to salads, sandwiches, smoothies. Sauté it briefly with olive oil and garlic like the Cretans have done for 3,000 years. Pickle the stems for winter. Dry the leaves for soup. Let a few plants go to seed and collect them in late summer. 1 handful is enough to plant an entire neighborhood. The people of Crete did not buy omega-3 supplements. They did not take fish oil capsules. They walked outside and picked a plant that grew everywhere for free. They lived past 90, while scientists spent decades trying to understand why. The secret was never hidden. It was growing in every field, waiting for anyone willing to look down. Every person who learns to recognize purslane becomes harder to control. Every yard where it is harvested instead of poisoned is a small rebellion against an industry that profits from your ignorance. Every meal made from this plant is a meal that owes nothing to any corporation, any supply chain, any permission. We did not lose purslane. We were taught to destroy it. The teaching cost billions and took generations, but the plant never listened. It is still here, still producing omega-3 that should not exist in a land plant, still offering survival to anyone willing to stop spraying and start seeing. If this root revealed something for you, subscribe to Recession Roots and hit the bell. Every like and every share preserves what they spend billions trying to poison out of existence. The next root breaks ground soon.